Um, Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. Welcome to our July seminar. I'm excited to introduce Celine, who is just wrapping up her internship here with us under the Microsoft AI for Good Lab. Throughout her time here, she's been collaborating on very fascinating projects in partnership with the Wild Nature Institute, and her research has been focused on key point detection for measuring body size of giraffes, which plays actually a critical role in their conservation efforts. So today, Selene will be sharing her insights and findings with us. But before we begin, let's take a moment to know more about Celine. So Celine is currently doing her internship here at the Microsoft um, AI for Good Lab. Her research is in partnership with Wild Nature Institute. In parallel, she is finishing her master's in data science, and in September, she will be studying her PhD in Netherlands on the use of water and electricity maintenance models in the Dutch Caribbean islands. So take it away, Celine.
Thank you very much, Millicent, for this introduction. So, good afternoon, everyone. So, my name is Solène de Vizer, and as Millicent told you just after, I'm a research scientist intern working with the AI for Good Lab in the Nairobi team. The goal of this presentation is to talk more about my internship project, which represent about like 3 months of work. So the last month was dedicated to, well, further experiments, paper deployments for the partners, of course, and some presentations and seminars like this one. So I wanted first to thank every contributors to this project and the partners, which are the Wild Nature Institute. And I also wanted to thank the Merit team for organizing this seminar. So let's begin with the presentation and with a short introduction on body size measurements that are, well, important biometric data for biologists with important application to understand, well, different things about animals like metabolism, physiology, energetics, competition, also like extension risks, life history, population age structure, and well, the demography actually in wide species. And so, however, previous studies relied on small samples on captive or dissected animals. But today, with computer vision models, researchers can use non-invasive and efficient techniques to make measurements on photographs. And so this is called actually photogrammetry. And so now I will give you some examples of previous research projects for biodiversity conservation before diving into the actual topic, which is the internship project that we did. So first here is an example. We have this research study on gorillas. So the goal of this paper was actually to use photogrammetry techniques to be able to measure sexual dimorphism between gorillas. And so the goal of this analysis was to investigate morphological diversity into gorillas population through different measurements like body length, the head size, the sexual dichromatism, so the color of their body. And so, indeed, sexual dimorphism helps to understand the impact on reproductive strategies, like, for example, male-male competition, mate choice, sexual conflicts. And so, this paper and the researchers identified that gorillas are highly sexually dimorphic and dichromatic primates thanks to photogrammetric techniques. And so another example, in this paper, researchers investigate on how to predict attributes of chimpanzee, such as identity, age group, and gender. And so they used actually convolutional neural network for that task. But the goal is not to, well, talk much about the technical aspects, but more about like biodiversity research, conservation research projects. And so these researchers finally introduced two datasets consisting of chimpanzee faces with detailed meta information to help to further research. And so their results can serve as well the foundation for automated large-scale animal monitoring and analysis in the future. Another example, one common task for wildlife conservation is to, as we talk, monitor endangered species, population and movements like the giraffe. Here is an example with tigers. And so the challenges on that research project are the fact that, well, traditional methods are not suitable for large population of wild species. And applying computer vision to camera sensor data requires accurate model for tracking wildlife, for example, and counting them. And so also one challenge is the fact that the methods today are designed for persons or car with limited pose variations and specific environments. And so this paper introduced a new data set on tiger with over 8,000 of video clips with almost 90 tigers. And so this dataset includes bounding box annotation, pose key points, and other stuff, other annotations. And so the dataset was contains a lot of diversity concerning the pose of animals, which make it really challenging for the task. And so the paper introduces how they deal with this by using deep neural network. You will understand after why I wanted to present you all of these challenges, because I did faces them actually during my project. And so one last example to allow you to better understand body size measurement through photogrammetric techniques. So the paper developed a digital photogrammetry technique and used a laser rangefinder to measure the shoulder height of African elephants. And so we can see on the illustration here the different possible techniques with first the custom built caliper, which consists of a large structure that is positioned next to the elephant and allowed to make measurements, which is not the base, which is a very invasive method. And then actually we can see on the slides that we can have other methods like the digital photogrammetry, which allow to measure the number of pixels between 2 points on the image, and then it uses the focal length of the camera to calculate the actual size distance of the object. And this is what actually the partners want to use to be able to measure the height of the giraffe with also our model, the model that we fine-tune to be able to make key points prediction. And then the last method is the laser rangefinder, which make measurements thanks to measuring the time it takes for the laser to bounce back after hitting the object. And so the paper shows that digital photogrammetric techniques here is actually less time consuming and offers precise measurements. And so now I hope that this paper showed you great examples of, well, research projects conducted on wide species for body size measurements. And so now let's dive into the topic, which is the key points detection model on wild Masai giraffe, in partnership with the Wild Nature Institute and AI for Good Lab. And so let's begin with a small background on why we are actually doing this project. So, Masai giraffe face threats from illegal killing and habitat loss today. And so to address this issue, the Wild Nature Institute is focused on, well, protecting Masai giraffe through conservation science and research. And so they conducted studies to understand giraffe behavior, ecology, and population dynamics, but also the human impacts on their environment. And so this knowledge helped them to develop conservation strategies, which are very important today. And so concerning the problems, so today researchers still have very actually important interrogations about giraffe body size and growth. Furthermore, well, today researchers have limited availability of large-scale measurements on wild Masai giraffe and, well, giraffe in generally. And so also the giraffe unique shape poses challenges actually to accurately measure their size. And so the question here is, how can we measure the proportion automatically from imagery on large-scale datasets? So I think you now make the link between this problematic and the research paper I just presented to you just at the beginning of this presentation. And so indeed, to measure the giraffe proportions, we could actually predict some, well, key points on strategic location. Like, for example, we can see on the slides the top ossicone, the top head, the neck, in addition, and also the front bottom hoof of the giraffe. So we can see the 4 key points on the slide. And so for that, photogrammetry and deep learning model offer a very efficient and non-invasive method to measure actually the giraffe body size. But what are the motivation behind that? Well, first, the body size measurements are, well, very important for understanding various aspects of extreme body size on mammals, because giraffes have a very specific body size that other mammals have not. And so, such as, for example, we can have interrogation about like the shape of the growth curve, the maximum size they can reach, whether they can their growth follow a predetermined patterns or not. So these are very like interrogation that the researchers are dealing with. And so secondly, the previous studies relied on small samples, as I told you, captive animals or dissected specimens. And so it is actually better to have, of course, large scales measurements on wild giraffe to advance the knowledge on the biology field. And so that's why actually we worked with the biggest data set from the Wild Nature Institute without using camera traps that we can find in the nature. And so the Masai giraffe that are mainly in Tanzania. So, well, for that project, we think about different approaches. Indeed, key points detection is a crucial task in computer vision to detect well, accurate localization for specific body parts or even like key points, or they're called like landmarks in the image. And so in recent years, this field have witnessed significant advancements with the emergence of, for example, deep learning techniques like CNN, so convolutional neural networks. And so this was mainly used actually for human pose estimation on the literature, and also for, well, fine-grained recognition. And so in the past, specific research on large-scale datasets of wild animals remains limited. And today the main problem is, well, how to find like open source datasets which are annotated for our specific task. And so we can find camera traps, different techniques that offer this kind of non-invasive method to capture these animals in the nature. And so, well, for that project, we did think about different approaches that we could find on the literature, not about like the giraffe, especially because we couldn't find any like research, actual research on body size measurements through deep learning methods for this particular case on Masai giraffe. But we can have in the literature methods like uses regression layers to predict the key points coordinates directly from the image. But we have also images, like methods, sorry, used for pose estimation. And these methods are using pairwise affinity between the key points. We can see on the graph with the human body size just on the slide. And so, well, actually this pairwise affinity between key points describe the likelihood that two key points belong to the same object. Two other approaches that we think about is actually using heat map regression. So, for example, a heat map is generated for each key points with a higher value indicated higher probability for the key points be located at that position. We can see that with the example of the ants just on the slide. And then we have also other methods that are using, but this was not the most appropriate one for that task, but using feature matching. So we can find some model on the literature that are extracting from the image features and then matched to find the key points on the other image with similarities and features. So now to diving into the project dataset that we used. So we worked with the partners, the Wild Nature Institute datasets. This dataset is coming from a crowdsourced annotation campaigns. And he's hosted on the Zooniverse platform, so you can find it. It is open source. And he is rehosted on the Lila Science, which is a repository for datasets related to biology and conservation. And so that dataset, we worked with this dataset, and it contains around 30K of images of giraffe, Masai giraffe in Tanzania. And in that dataset, we have also a JSON file because we need annotation to train our model. And so these annotations have been done by some volunteers during a campaign. And so the JSON file is structured with different dictionary, where for each image, we have a dictionary that contains the key points coordinates. And so we have a list of annotations for each of the 4 key points. And so furthermore, like 5 persons annotated each key points for each giraffe. And so the instruction during the campaign was to annotate 1 giraffe I want to insist on that, and I will explain to you why. So to annotate one giraffe only on each image, even if you have several giraffe on it, but this was not the reality, and it was, and we had to do some further data analysis to before training our models, because the model was lost with some kinds of outliers that we found out after. So indeed, so the overview of the project to tackle the problem, we followed like 4 main steps, which were the exploratory data analysis, the object detection model, the key points detection model after, and the deployment of the model for the partners, which is important to allow them to make prediction and inference on new images in the future to help them in their research. And so the first step is actually was actually really crucial in this project to understand the data and identify the different challenges on the data sets. And this is the step where we understood that the importance of using an object detection model before using the key points detection model. And so indeed, well, we did face some challenges. For example, in the data set, we have around 30K of images with different size. But actually the dimension of the images are really high, so we had to resize them before like training the model. And so to prevent from distortion, we keep only the images where the ratio height over width on the original image dimension is equal to 1.5. So we keep only 99% of the images for that first step. And so one other important challenges that we also had was the fact that we have around 55% of images on the 30K images with missing key points annotations. And so this is problematic when we want to use a key points detection model that only uses a regression output layer because we don't have any classification layer to tell whether the key point is visible or not. And so let's sum up now the challenges that we faced during the project at the beginning when we discovered many things about the datasets when we were doing some data analysis before training the model, because the quality of the data is very important, and you will be able to see that with the actual experiments that we did. So basically, we had different kinds of challenges. First, the challenges on the image. So the image, as we just talked about, have very high dimension. We are like obliged to resize them before feeding the model, and so we remove the samples where we suppose that the image would have faces distortion. Furthermore, we have also an imbalanced data set, well, with the giraffe that have different orientations, because the people are taking photographs in the nature with their cameras, and they are, well, orienting the camera in different position. But the data set is very imbalanced because we have only 20% of images that are horizontal, which is not sufficient to train a model because a model needs to be like with balanced data to be able to generalize well. We have also imbalanced data sets with the fact that the giraffe that have been taken into the nature have very different size, in a way that the giraffe can be really far in the background on the image or very close to the camera. So this is one of the challenges that the model had to face because, well, the distance, like for example, if you have a very small giraffe very far, even if the predicted key points is actually very far from the ground truth key point, the distance will still be less than if the giraffe would have been very like close to the camera. And so another problem is the fact that some giraffe, a lot of them are cut, and so some annotations are random because people annotated these key points during campaigns, and we are human, and some of them put them like random annotation in the vegetation. We have also an imbalanced data set with more or less contrast or visibility that makes the giraffe more difficult to identify actually in the background. And some image contains also more than one giraffe on it, because sometimes in the nature you could find like giraffe are usually not like alone in the nature, and so this will cause some problem. And I will explain that to you right after. Other challenges are the one on the key points, so the JSON files that we had to do the project. Some giraffes are not correctly annotated in a way that the person makes some confusion about, like, should I be annotating the left or the right top ossicone? Should I be annotating the right or left hoof? Some random annotation on the vegetations, and also, oh, sorry. And I don't know if there are a question or anything. And so some annotations are also on the back of the giraffe instead of the front bottom hoof. I don't know if Millicent, there is some question or not. It's okay?
No, actually, no. Please
Okay,
go
I
ahead.
can continue then.
Alright.
Perfect. And then we have the last challenge that we had to face is the fact that this is really important. All annotations are mixed together in the JSON file. And so if we have more than one giraffe on the same sample, the same image, this will be problematic. And so we found a solution by using the mask RCNN. I will be describing that right after. And so, as I told you, 55% of the samples have at least one missing key point. So we had to remove them also, which makes the datasets with less data, which is always better actually to have more data to train our model, but we had to remove them to have better accuracy. And then we have also some random images with like 50 random annotation. I will show you some example right after. So some visual example for you now. As I told you, 20% of the image are horizontal with the head on the right, and only it was like 2% of the images have the head on the left. So the dataset is highly imbalanced, and this is not good for the model. And so for that, to be able to detect this image giraffe orientation, we used some constraints, inequalities on the key points coordinates, but we couldn't use actually all of the key points because you can see also the red arrows that shows that the position of the hoof of the giraffe may be different. And so we can't use all of the key points as a detector tool, but we still used some of them to know what is the giraffe orientation in the datasets. And so why are we so much interested about the orientations of the giraffe in the dataset? It is because the model that we used was highly influenced by the datasets. And as we have only 20% of horizontal images, the dataset was very imbalanced, and the model with the experiments that we conducted didn't generalize well. And so we have two options. First, we can remove the bad samples with high accuracy. Or second, we can create a more balanced dataset with augmentation techniques. And so we use both, and the model performs better by removing them. And so we removed because we saw a correlation between the samples with bad MSE with very high metric during the training, and the sample with a very high value for that ratio that you can find actually on the slides. And so we used the ratio, which was the distance ossicone head over the head front bottom hoof. And so this means that a high ratio value means that small numbers, that means that we have a small number for the denominator of that ratio. And so, well, the giraffe might be cut or horizontal. And so we can see that on the diagram that the great majority of the image have the same ratio value, which is good, very small, but the other ratio value are very high, and we can see them in the red rectangle just here. And during the experiment, we saw that these samples were responsible for making the model with high MSE metric, which means bad accuracy. So we removed them. This is part of the preprocessing step that we conducted before training our model. And then, so some visual examples also for you. So the model will have to learn the features and characteristics of the giraffe body to make the prediction, but also the dependencies between the key points, and thus the kind, it's again of like learn a skeleton, because actually some giraffe are cut and the annotation are random, and we tried to find some method to remove them by using some ratio method. It did work, but we don't have, like, we are not sure at like 100% that it actually like all of the bad sample have been removed. So we must be sure that our model will predict like the correct features, links the correct features to each key point location, but also predict like a sort of like skeleton, like the dependencies between the key points, which is really high. And other bad samples example we just talk about is like the annotations that are not in the correct hoof. So we can see here on the slide that, well, some key points are very like are not correctly annotated. And another example is the blue key points that is on the back of the giraffe, but actually I did some experiments and this key point is supposed to be on the hoof of the giraffe and not the back. So we always have that when we are trying to use some, well, campaigns method to annotate the datasets, but we need to find methods to be sure that our data is, well, good data to train our model. Then I told you about some challenges in the fact that some giraffes were composed of like 30 or 50 annotations. Here we can find on the dataset that some during the campaign, some people annotated with random annotations, so we had to remove them. And secondly, here the challenges on the second image is the fact that for each image, all annotations are mixed together in the JSON file, even if there are more than one giraffe on it. So on this image, we can see that there are 7 giraffes. And so if we take, for example, the key points top head key points dictionary that contains the list of annotations, for that sample, we will have several annotations and we will not be able to know just by looking at the coordinates to which giraffe these annotations are belonging to. So indeed, in the original description of the dataset, well, we told us that for one image, we should have one giraffe annotated by 5% for each key point. But on the diagram, we can see like if X is actually the total number of annotations per sample, when we say X is equal to 5, so 5% annotated one key points. It means that for all key points, we have 5% annotated all key points. And so we can see that there are only 300 of images that are following the initial instruction during the campaign. And so we have also 55% of the samples that have missing values, and we can see that most of the images without missing values have between 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 annotations per key points per sample. So does that mean that we have two giraffe for like one giraffe for annotations between 1 to 5 and two for annotations between 1 to 10? Well, actually no, and we have a problematic with that. If we have 7 giraffe and 2 annotations per key points, we don't know to which giraffe the key points are belonging to. And so for that, this is a nice introduction to explain to you why we used an object detection model before doing the key points detection model. And so that is the reason why we use the pre-trained model Masai CNN, pre-trained on the COCO datasets. And so the idea was to use it on each sample that we had on the datasets and create as much sample as we have giraffe object detected on the image. And so, but like also only if key points from the original JSON file are belonging to it. And so we only create a sample if we have at least also 3 key points belonging to the bounding box detected by the object detection model. To remove especially the missing values samples. And then we can see on the slide that we cropped the image by taking an expanded version of the bounding box to be sure that no giraffe are cut because of the object detection model. So with what we have to have actually like a data set where we have the giraffe and his key points, and not like several giraffe and mixed annotation for all of the giraffe. And so, well, we worked only on the images with no missing key points. And here is a diagram that shows the number of object giraffe detected on images. Like we have around 1,300 of images with 2 giraffe. And so we decided to keep only the 1 giraffe object samples because it gives us better performances for our model. And so, yeah, indeed, actually, we suppose that if we take samples with different, if we use the Masai CNN, if we have several images, several on one image, several giraffe on it, we can see that some giraffe are overlapping sometimes. And so, well, if we have 2 heads almost on the same body parts giraffe, it will be complicated for the model. So we only kept the data sets where we have one giraffe detected on it. And so to conclude with all of these pre-processing steps and why we did all of that, here is the summary of the different pre-processing methods that we used on these data sets. And so there are different hypotheses named H1 to H5. This is the pre-processing step that we did for the image. And so, the idea is actually to better describe our dataset for the result table. And this is the table for image pre-processing. And then we have the table for the key points pre-processing. And so, well, on that, we use data augmentations techniques because we had a lot of images and we did many pre-processing steps to have, well, the best data set possible to train our model. And so we tried some data augmentation techniques also to have more samples, but our model didn't like the like flipping, like doing data augmentation by like flipping the images and everything. So we did data augmentations to have more samples, but only on the key points. Like, for example, we were duplicating the image and we were taking, instead of taking the median over all annotations for each key points, after applying the mask RCNN, we use random combination of the original annotation for each key points. Or we have another possibility, which is to generate new key points annotations accordingly to the uniform distribution between an interval of like median -2, median +2. And so, well, we did found that actually the median technique was good because it allows to remove extreme values and not takes the outliers. So when we use random combination of annotation, we take the risk to add outliers on our training label. And so to remove the wrong annotation, we compute the angle between different key points coordinates, like for example, the top head, the neck, and the front bottom hoof of the giraffe. And this was especially a techniques to remove the bad samples annotations when you have the, like, for example, the key points that are in the back of the giraffe instead of being like in the front bottom hoof. And so to talk more now about like the model, so the first approach that we used was the ResNet 50 backbone to create feature maps from images. And so this is a common approach actually for key points detection. And it worked really well on facial key points detection. So we did tested different output layers architecture to decrease the feature map channel representation and increase actually the spatial dimension. So we use, for example, average pooling layer over feature maps to conserve the channel output, or well, layers to over spatial dimension of each feature map to conserve the spatial dimension. And we also did tested different losses like scaled MSE, because the distance between, as we saw during the pre-processing step and the challenges in the dataset, we can scale the MSE to, well, because the distance between the key points of a little giraffe in the background or a big one influence the model. And we also tested an architecture with 4 separate layers, but we did realize that the correlation between the key points was learned actually by the model by using 1 layer. So with 4 separate layer, the model didn't work. And so this was the first approach that we did. And then the second approach that we did was used the Keypoint RCNN model. And so, well, basically to explain to you just briefly before showing the final results of this presentation. So the RCNN is using a backbone network to ResNet 50 to extract features from the input image by using convolutional layers followed by like pooling layers and everything. Then you have a module which is called the RPN, which takes which takes the feature map from the backbone network and generates a region proposal which are actually potential bounding box that may contain the object of interest, so the giraffe. And then that produces fixed size feature maps for each proposal. We can see that on the the slides here. And then we have a key point head and a key points prediction to make further process to the feature maps. And then we are doing the prediction with the output of the model, which is a set of feature maps representing the likelihood of each key point present at different spatial location within each region proposal. And so for that, the feature maps are passed through a softmax activation function. And so finally, it represents the probabilities of each key point present at each spatial location. And so then the loss calculation using like the cross entropy loss is computed between the predicted probabilities and also the ground truth the ground truth one-hot encoded vector to be able to measure the dissimilarity between between the two distribution of key points. the predicted one and the ground truth one. So to finish with this presentation, I have some results about like this project. So we did a lot of experiments. The goal is not to show all of the like results, but only like the most important one. We used actually the mean absolute error to evaluate the performance of the model because the MSC couldn't represent the overall performance of the model because actually the outliers are still very important, and the MSC was too high and not representative of the actual performance of the model. And so here, the mean absolute error showed the average distance between the ground truth key points and the predicted one by RM model. And so, well, to conclude, so we use different, you can see on the slide, we use different data sets with different hypotheses that we use during our preprocessing step. And we can see actually that the data sets highly influence the model performances, because you can see here that actually the MAE is very high by using a baseline, which is the baseline with no missing values, no image size, with class D and E, and also only one giraffe per image, and also remove the samples where the key points doesn't belong to the bounding box predicted by the mask CNN. And we can see that without preprocessing step, the results performs really poorly, but with preprocessing steps, has the two last lines of this table gives us way better performances. So this shows the average distance between the ground truth key points and the predicted one. And so we did created an accuracy metric to have more intuitive results for people and partners. And so the idea is to compute actually the total percent of correctly predicted key points. And so on the figure, we can see that a key point is correctly predicted if the distance between the true key point in blue and the predicted key points in red is like the distance is inferior to 5 pixels, which is small, and we can change the threshold, but having a very small threshold increase like the performances of the model, like interpretation. And so finally, last slide about the results. Here are the accuracy that we had on our model. So we can see that actually we had like between 60% to 92% of accuracy, which is quite good actually. But we can see that our model can predict better 3 key points, and that the preprocessing step with the different hypotheses with, for example, H3 and H4 are very important to have good results and performances on this model. And so here, so finally, this is some examples of the model results. So you have these images that are given to the model, and so the model is able to predict the key points. And so you can see the ground truth key points are in blue and the predicted key points are in red. And the model is also, the RCNN is also detecting the giraffe, the region of interest before doing the prediction, key points prediction. So here are other examples. And so finally, a very quick video. This is a little demo with Gradio, because this is important to do that kind of project, but this is even more important to have impacts, to be able to deliver a solution to our partner. And so here is a small video where you have a demo of what the model is performing. So you have an input image, and then the model is able to predict, to detect the giraffe, and then to predict 4 key points. And so, yeah, here are some examples. And so to conclude, well, so I think the main important points to remember is that we could try every model that we want. If we don't have the correct data sets with the correct preprocessing step, it will not work. So also another important thing is that we choose to evaluate the performance of our model with the mean absolute error because, well, our data set was complex, and so this is a better metric to evaluate the performances without taking so much about like the outliers. And so, well, the final result, as you know, the RCNN works really good but only if the dataset is good with good preprocessing steps. So thank you everyone for your attention. So a big thanks to all of the contributors to this project. My supervisor from Redmond, my manager, Gima from the Nairobi team, the partners, which are the Wild Nature Institute, and of course, thank you very much from the Mari team for organizing this amazing seminar. So if you have any questions, I will be pleased to answer it. So sorry for the time of this presentation, but don't hesitate. We have 4 minutes left, I think, for the question now. So don't hesitate.
Thank you very, very much, Celine. That was quite insightful talk. Thank you very much. Everybody, I don't know whether you have questions for Celine. Feel free to unmute yourself and just ask your question.
Actually, I do have a question.
Yes.
So you mentioned that the giraffes are not the only animals for which we want some kind of measurements. So I'm wondering if this model could serve as a pre-trained universal model for all kinds of animals.
So I think it depends on the task. So here, the goal of the project was also, of course, to be able to make prediction on Masai giraffes. So I'm more an expert on that. But we did fine-tune a model. The model that we used, we fine-tuned it on our datasets, but the model was pre-trained actually on other for other tasks, like the same task, but for other like key points prediction. But it has been actually pre-trained on like several category of objects, and by object I mean all of the objects that you could find on the COCO dataset, which are a giraffe, but a very small portion. You have animal category, you have like I don't know them by heart, but like you have many category. So it could be a possibility to pre-train, like to fine-tune for your task for other key point prediction, to fine-tune like your model for your task with with our model. So it's an eventuality. Yeah, you can of course try to fine-tune the model, but yeah, keep in mind that you will not be able like to. You have to fine-tune the model to make your task and your model performed well. I don't know if I was clear in my answer, but yeah, this is an obvious task. Okay. Thanks.
Sounds promising. Thank you.
Any other question, Masai?
I got a quick question. I'm curious about the delivery to your partners. And
yes.
So how accessible is sort of this model for like maybe the average your partners to use?
Well, so actually I did show you some demo, but this demo is not like it's a framework that we use just to make the demo of the model. But this is a very good question because we are working with our partners and we delivered them an executable Python file. So the idea is to give them a solution because they are not coding. So we need to provide them with a solution that like does not require them to code, of course. And so the idea is to build an executable Python file. And so they just have to do on their terminal, the computer terminal, you just have to run like a few command lines to make the executable Python file worked. And then you also mentioned the input directory, where are your images, the images you want to make inference on. And then you also mention the output file, which is the directory where you want to make the prediction of the model. So they just have basically a few command line, like 2 command line to use, and then the model is performing well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any other question, Celine? Otherwise, you are right on time. Thanks again, Celine. That was quite enlightening.
Thanks to you.
Yeah, thank you very, very much, everybody, for joining.
Thank you very much.
Good luck, Celine, with your PhD.
Thank you very much.
And this was a great project, and thanks to also the partners that you worked with, if they are here in the call, you know. Thanks, everybody. We'll keep you updated with information about our next seminar next month. Thank you for joining. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
This can be shared. Yes, it can be shared externally. We recorded and we'll upload it on Microsoft's YouTube channel. Yes, so it will be available publicly. Thank you. Bye.